A black single dad gives his last $20 to a woman with a declined card at a Detroit grocery store on a Friday night. She doesn't recognize him. He recognizes her immediately, because 3 weeks later, that same woman sits across from him in a glass-walled boardroom 20 floors above the city, her face drained of color, her hands gripping the edge of a mahogany table like it's the only thing keeping her upright. The man stands at the head of the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, close-cropped graying hair catching the cold LED light. His borrowed sport coat doesn't quite fit. His hands scarred from years of work most people never see rest flat on a stack of documents. 20 executives watch in silence. The woman is Victoria Harlow, CEO of Meridian Automotive Solutions, the kind of woman whose calendar is managed by 3 assistants and whose decisions move millions of dollars before breakfast. She's trying to speak, but the words won't come. Because the man just proved, in front of her entire board, that she stole his work, that she built her turnaround strategy on his analysis and erased his name from every page. One of the board members, silver-haired, mid-60s, sharp eyes, leans forward. "Mr. Webb," he says slowly, "you said you were senior VP here. When?" The man's voice is quiet, steady. 2005 to 2010. Someone at the table inhales sharply. The older board member nods. "I remember you." Victoria's jaw tightens. She opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again. The man looks directly at her. No anger, no triumph. Just the weight of every humiliation he swallowed to keep his daughter fed. "3 weeks ago," he says, "you couldn't pay for groceries. I gave you my last $20. You didn't recognize me then." He pauses. The room is so quiet you can hear the ventilation hum. "Do you recognize me now?" If you believe kindness should never be weaponized against the person who showed it, stay with this story, because what happens next will restore your faith in karma. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, have you ever been invisible to someone who should have known better? But to understand how a grocery store cashier brought a CEO to her knees, we need to go back 3 weeks to the night. A quiet man walked into work with $20 to his name and a daughter waiting for him under fluorescent lights. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Marcus Webb stood at register 7, his hands moving with the kind of efficiency that comes from doing the same thing 10,000 times. Scan bag. Smile. Repeat. His blue vest hung loose over a faded Pistons hoodie. The fabric was worn thin at the elbows. His name tag sat crooked on his chest, the plastic scratched and yellowed from years of use. It was 9 p.m. on a Friday night. The store was nearly empty. Just the hum of refrigerator units and the occasional squeak of a shopping cart wheel against linoleum that had seen better days. Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped hair going gray at the temples. His skin was warm brown, his eyes deep-set and steady. The kind of eyes that suggested he'd seen more than most. The kind that didn't look away when things got hard. He scanned a box of cereal, then a gallon of milk, then a bag of frozen peas. Near the customer service desk, his daughter Amara sat cross-legged on the floor. She was 10 years old, small for her age, with her hair pulled into 2 perfect puffs tied with yellow ribbons. Her winter coat was folded beneath her like a cushion. A library book lay open on her lap. A worksheet with math problems sat beside her. She didn't complain. She never did. This was their routine. He worked. She waited. They went home together. An elderly woman approached the register, her card half full. Marcus greeted her with a quiet nod. She fumbled through her purse, searching for her loyalty card. Her hand shook slightly. "Take your time," Marcus said. She found it buried beneath a pile of receipts. Marcus scanned it, then began ringing up her items. Bread, eggs, a small container of yogurt. He bagged them carefully, placing the eggs on top so they wouldn't crack. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said. Marcus nodded. "You have a good night, ma'am." She shuffled toward the exit, her cart wobbling on uneven wheels. A nurse in scrubs came next. She looked exhausted. Her shoes squeaked against the floor. Marcus recognized her from other late shifts. She never made eye contact, just stared at her phone while he scanned her items. He didn't take it personally. Everyone was tired. From across the store, a voice cut through the quiet. "Webb, you got a minute?" Marcus looked up. Dale, the night supervisor, stood near the office door. He was a short man in his 50s with thinning hair and a permanent scowl. His polo shirt was too tight across his stomach. "Almost done here," Marcus said. Dale didn't move. He just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Marcus finished bagging the nurse's groceries. She took them without a word and left. He wiped down the conveyor belt, then walked over to Dale. "You're moving too slow tonight," Dale said. Marcus didn't respond. "I've got 3 customers waiting at register 4, and you're over here chatting with old ladies." She couldn't find her card. Dale's jaw tightened. I don't care. You keep this up, I'm cutting your hours. Marcus felt Amara's eyes on him from across the store. She'd stopped pretending to read. She was watching. He kept his voice even. Understood. Dale turned back toward the office, muttering something under his breath. Marcus returned to his register. He clocked out his drawer, counted the bills, checked the coins. Everything balanced. It always did. Dale reappeared a few minutes later, clipboard in hand. Corporate sent the final restructuring notices last week, he said. You see yours? Marcus nodded. 30 days. Then layoffs start hitting. Dale tapped his pen against the clipboard. Just so you know, Marcus already knew. The notice had come in a plain white envelope slipped into his locker. He'd read it once, then he'd folded it and put it in his pocket. He hadn't told Amara yet. Dale walked away. Marcus stood there for a moment. The store felt colder than usual. The lights felt harsher. He had a daughter to feed. He had rent due in 2 weeks. He had no backup plan, 30 days. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Inside was a single $20 bill, worn creased. It was all he had until his paycheck deposited on Monday morning. Amara appeared beside him, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Dad? He looked down at her. Can we get pizza this weekend? Her eyes were bright, hopeful. She'd been working on her math homework for 2 hours without complaining. She deserved pizza. Marcus folded the 20 back into his wallet. We'll see, baby. Her face didn't fall. She just nodded. She was used to that answer. He pocketed the wallet. We got 2 more hours. You okay? I'm okay. She returned to her spot near the customer service desk. Marcus watched her settle back onto her coat, her legs crossing, her book opening to the same page. Then he turned back to register 7 and waited for the next customer. 47 minutes later, a woman in a charcoal cashmere coat walked through the automatic doors. Marcus noticed her immediately. Not because she was dressed like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Not because her heels clicked against the worn linoleum with the kind of confidence that suggested she owned every room she entered. He noticed her because he recognized her. Victoria Harlow. She moved through the aisles with purpose, her phone pressed to her ear. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun. Her face had the kind of tight, polished look that came from expensive skincare and minimal sleep. Marcus kept scanning items for the customer in front of him. An older man buying instant coffee and cigarettes. He bagged them carefully and wished the man a good night. Victoria approached register 7 with her arms full. Organic kale, imported brie, a bottle of wine with a label Marcus didn't recognize. She set everything on the conveyor belt without looking at him. Her phone was still pressed to her ear. I don't care what the vendor says, Michael. We close by Friday or we walk. She ended the call, dropped the phone into her purse, finally glanced up at Marcus. Her eyes swept past him. No recognition, no acknowledgement. Just a quick assessment that he was there to serve her. Marcus began scanning her items. His hands moved on autopilot while his mind registered the woman standing in front of him, the CEO of Meridian Automotive Solutions, the woman who'd signed off on a corporate restructuring 3 months ago that had gutted partnerships across the state, the woman whose decision had set a countdown clock on his job. 30 days left. She didn't know who he was. She'd never know. To her, he was just the cashier. He scanned the wine. $42. He scanned the cheese. Another 12. Behind Victoria, a small line was forming. An elderly woman with a single bag of cat food. A younger guy in scrubs who looked like he'd just gotten off a double shift. Marcus finished scanning. The total appeared on the screen. $47.83. Victoria pulled out her wallet. She tapped her credit card against the reader. Declined. She frowned. Tapped it again. Declined. Her jaw tightened. She pulled out a second card. Black, heavy, the kind that suggested unlimited spending. She tapped it against the reader with more force this time. Declined. Victoria's fingers moved to her phone. She opened her banking app. Her eyes scanned the screen. Then her face changed. The confidence cracked. Just for a second. Account frozen. Some kind of security hold. Something technical that shouldn't be happening but was. The line behind her shifted. The elderly woman checked her watch. The guy in scrubs stared at his phone. Victoria's cheeks flushed. Not from warmth. From something Marcus recognized immediately because he'd felt it 1,000 times himself. Humiliation. She tried a third card. Her movements were sharper now, less controlled, declined. This is absurd, she muttered. Her voice was tight, controlled, but underneath it Marcus heard the tremor. She wasn't used to this, to being stuck, to people watching her fail at something as simple as buying groceries. Marcus looked at the total on the screen. He looked at the woman in the cashmere coat whose hands were gripping her phone too hard. He looked past her at the line of people waiting. Then he looked across the store to where Amara sat near the customer service desk. She wasn't reading anymore. She was watching him, her eyes wide and serious. Marcus reached into his pocket. He pulled out his wallet. Inside was the $20 bill. Worn, creased, all he had until Monday morning. He didn't hesitate. He slid it across the scanner. "I've got 20 on it," he said quietly. Victoria's head snapped up. Her eyes met his for the first time. "Excuse me?" Marcus pulled out his debit card. He tapped it against the reader. The remaining $27.83 processed. The transaction completed with a soft beep. "You're all set," he said. Victoria stared at him. Confusion flickered across her face. Then something else. Something that looked almost like offense. "I don't need," she started. But Marcus was already bagging her groceries. He placed the wine in first, cushioned it with the kale, added the cheese on top. His movements were efficient, practiced. He'd done this 10,000 times. He held the bag out to her. "I can pay you back," she said. Her voice had lost some of its edge. "You're all set," Marcus repeated. She took the bag. Her fingers brushed against the plastic. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else. Then she closed it. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her heels clicked against the floor. The automatic door slid open. She disappeared into the parking lot. Marcus turned to the elderly woman with the cat food. "I'm sorry for the wait," he said. She smiled at him. "You're a kind man." He scanned her item, bagged it, handed it to her gently. The guy in scrubs was next. Then a woman buying diapers and formula. Then another customer, and another. Across the store, Amara appeared beside him. She tugged on his vest. "Dad?" He looked down at her. "Why'd you do that?" Marcus glanced toward the parking lot. Through the windows, he could see taillights pulling away, a sleek black car disappearing into the night. "Because she needed help," he said. Amara frowned. She was 10, old enough to understand that $20 mattered, old enough to remember the conversation about pizza. But she didn't argue. She just nodded and returned to her spot near the customer service desk. Marcus stood at register 7, his wallet lighter, his shift not yet over. Outside, Victoria Harlow's taillights faded into the Detroit night, and Marcus went back to work. Victoria woke Saturday morning in her Birmingham home and couldn't stop thinking about the cashier. She'd slept poorly. Her mind kept replaying the moment, the declined cards, the people watching, the worn $20 bill sliding across the scanner, the quiet voice. "I've got 20 on it." She sat in her home office with a cup of coffee going cold on the desk. The room was all clean lines and white surfaces. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked wooded property dusted with snow. Everything in the space was intentional, controlled, except her thoughts. She opened her laptop, pulled up the files from Meridian's latest restructuring initiative. The grocery store chain fell under the parent company they were dismantling. She'd signed off on the partnership elimination 3 months ago. Standard cost-cutting. She hadn't thought twice about it. Now she needed a name. She picked up her phone and called Trevor, her assistant. He answered on the second ring. "I need you to identify someone," she said. "Employee at the grocery outlet on Michigan Avenue. Register 7 Friday night around 10 p.m. Trevor didn't ask why. He never did. "I'll need access to their HR database." "We have it. Parent company is in the restructuring files." "Give me an hour." Victoria ended the call. She stood at the window, watching bare branches shift in the wind. She couldn't explain why this mattered. The man had helped her. She should have thanked him properly. That was all. But it wasn't all. Something about the way he'd looked at her. Not with judgment, not with resentment. Just calm. Like he'd seen people like her before and knew exactly what they were. Her phone buzzed 53 minutes later. "Marcus Webb," Trevor said. "Age 41. Hired October 2018. Clean employment record. No disciplinary issues. No degree listed in his file." Victoria wrote the name on a notepad. "Marcus Webb. Anything else?" "That's everything in the grocery outlet system. Thank you." She hung up. Then she opened Meridian's legacy employee database. The system went back 20 years. She typed the name into the search bar. One result appeared. Marcus Webb, Senior Vice President of Strategic Innovation. Hired April 2005. Age 26 at hire. Victoria's hand stopped moving. She clicked the file. A photo loaded. A younger version of the man from the grocery store. Clean-shaven, sharp suit. Eyes that hadn't yet learned what loss looked like. The same broad shoulders, the same dark skin, the same steady gaze. She scrolled through his employment history. Hired at 26, promoted to VP at 28, led the acquisitions team. Built the market analysis protocols Meridian still used. Commendations from 3 different board chairmen. Revenue attributed to his strategies, over $200 million across 5 years. Then, resigned November 2010. Reason: personal leave. No return date, no forwarding information. Just gone. Victoria cross-referenced the dates. She'd bought Meridian in 2021. Marcus Webb had left 11 years before she arrived. But his protocols were still in place. His frameworks were still the foundation of how the company evaluated acquisitions. She'd been using his work for 3 years without knowing his name. She searched for him in LinkedIn. No profile. She tried Facebook. Nothing. She ran his name through the corporate network to see if he'd landed somewhere else in the industry. Nothing. He'd left Meridian in 2010, hired at the grocery outlet in 2018. 8 years unaccounted for. Then 6 years scanning groceries. Victoria sat back in her chair. The coffee had gone completely cold. Outside, a cardinal landed on a snow-covered branch. Its red feathers were bright against the white. She didn't understand. People like Marcus Webb didn't just disappear. They didn't go from corner offices to cash registers. There had to be a reason. A scandal, maybe. Some kind of failure that forced him out. But his file showed nothing. No disciplinary action, no performance issues. Just a resignation and a reason that explained nothing. Personal leave. She thought about the $20 bill again. The way he'd handed it over without hesitation. Like it was nothing. Like he had plenty. But he didn't have plenty. She'd seen his worn uniform, his daughter doing homework on the floor of a grocery store at 9 p.m. on a Friday night. He'd given her his last $20, and she hadn't even recognized him. Something unfamiliar moved through her chest. Not quite guilt, not quite shame. Something closer to fascination, or maybe obligation. She picked up her phone again. Trevor answered immediately. "I need you to clear my Monday afternoon schedule," she said. "Which meetings?" "All of them." "May I ask why?" Victoria looked at Marcus Webb's employee photo on her screen, the young man who'd built half of what made her company valuable, the man who now stood behind a register in a discount grocery store. "I need to fix something," she said. She ended the call before Trevor could ask what. Then she closed her laptop and stood at the window for a long time, watching the cardinal, thinking about a man who'd saved her from embarrassment and probably didn't even remember her name. But she remembered his now, and she was going back to that grocery store, Saturday afternoon. Marcus sat at the small kitchen table in their apartment, papers and markers spread across the worn laminate surface. Amara had a school project due Monday, Family Heroes. She chewed on the end of her pencil, her worksheet half finished. The radiator clanked in the corner. Through the thin walls, they could hear the neighbor's television. "Dad?" Amara looked up. "Can I write about Mama?" Marcus's hands stilled. He'd been helping her sketch a border for her poster. "Of course you can, baby, but I don't remember her." The words landed quietly, matter of fact. Amara was 2 when Shanice died. She had no memories of her mother that weren't built from photographs and stories Marcus told her. Marcus stood and walked to the bookshelf. Behind 3 library books and a stack of bills, he found the photo album. He brought it back to the table and sat beside his daughter. He opened to a page near the middle. A photo of Shanice in chef's whites, holding a 3-tier wedding cake. Her smile was wide. Her dark skin glowed under the kitchen lights. Her locks were pulled back with a yellow ribbon. "Your mama," Marcus said, "was brilliant." Amara leaned closer, studying the photograph. "She made that cake. She made everything. Cakes, pastries, bread from scratch." Marcus's voice was quiet. She could taste something once and know every ingredient. She had a gift. Amara traced her finger along the edge of the photo. What else? She was kind and fearless. Marcus turned the page. Another photo. Shanice laughing in the doorway of their old house in Southfield, the house they'd lost. She didn't let fear stop her from anything. He could see that house so clearly. The small front porch, the kitchen where Shanice tested recipes, the bedroom where they painted the walls yellow because she loved that color. Before Amara was born, before everything changed, the memory pulled at him. 2008 Oni. He was 29 years old, the youngest senior VP at Meridian Automotive Solutions. He'd walk into boardrooms wearing tailored suits that cost more than he now made in a month. He'd present acquisition strategies to men twice his age, who listened because he was always right. He remembered one afternoon, late summer. He'd been preparing for a presentation when Shanice appeared in his office doorway, carrying a container of homemade lunch, jerk chicken and rice. She'd taken the bus from their house in Southfield just to surprise him. The other executives had smiled. They'd liked Shanice. Everyone did. Marcus had kissed her forehead and promised he'd be home by 6. He'd kept that promise then. The memory shifted. Darker now, 2009. Shanice sitting across from him in an oncologist's office. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. The doctor's voice explaining treatment options. Shanice's hand in his, her grip tight. Marcus had stepped away from Meridian 2 weeks later. He'd told the board it was temporary. Family emergency. Personal leave. They'd understood. They'd promised his position would be waiting. He'd spent the next 3 years caring for his wife. Amara was born in 2010. A miracle, the doctor said, given Shanice's condition. Shanice held her daughter for the first time and cried. Not from sadness, from joy that she'd lived long enough to meet her. The savings drained fast. Experimental treatments, specialists, medications insurance wouldn't cover. Marcus sold the house in Southfield. They moved to a smaller apartment, then a smaller one. Shanice died in 2012 on a Tuesday morning in March. Amara was 2 years old, asleep in the next room. Marcus held his wife's hand until her breathing stopped. He tried to return to corporate work in 2013, but 3 years was too long. The industry had moved on. The executives who'd known him had moved to other companies. The new leadership didn't know his name. He could have called Meridian directly, could have asked for his old position. But pride stopped him. He'd left. He'd chosen Shanice over the career. He wouldn't beg to come back, so he took what he could find. Retail jobs, warehouse work, eventually the grocery store. He told himself it was temporary, just until something better came along. That was 12 years ago. "Dad?" Amara's voice pulled him back. She was watching him with those wide, serious eyes. "Do you miss your old job?" Marcus looked at the photo of Shanice, the yellow ribbon in her hair, the smile that could light up a room. "I miss your mother," he said. "That's all that matters." Amara was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were small, warm. "She would have been proud of you," Amara said. Marcus didn't trust himself to speak. He just squeezed her hand. They sat like that for a while. The radiator clanking, the neighbor's television humming through the walls. The photo album opened between them. Finally, Amara pulled her hand back and picked up her pencil. "I'm gonna write that she was fearless." "That's good, baby." "And that she loved yellow." Marcus smiled. "Yeah, she did." Amara bent over her worksheet, her pencil moving in careful loops. Marcus watched her for a moment. Then he stood and returned the photo album to the bookshelf. When he came back to the table, Amara had finished writing. She looked up at him. "Can I ask you something else?" "Of course." "Are you happy?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Marcus sat down slowly. He thought about Register 7, about Dale's threats, about the 30 days he had left before the layoffs hit. He thought about Victoria Harlow walking out of the grocery store with bags he paid for, not even knowing his name. Then he looked at his daughter, the yellow ribbons in her hair, the serious expression on her face, the way she was watching him like his answer mattered more than anything. "I'm happy I have you," he said. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. Amara seemed to accept this. She returned to her project. Marcus helped her cut out pictures from an old magazine. They worked in comfortable silence until the winter light faded from the window and the kitchen grew dim. Later, after Amara had gone to bed, Marcus stood at the sink washing their dinner dishes. The water ran hot over his hands. Through the window, he could see the lights of Detroit glowing against the dark sky. He thought about Shanice, about the life they'd built and lost, about the man he used to be. Then he dried his hands and closed the photo album one more time. Monday afternoon. Marcus sat at one of the break room tables, eating a sandwich he'd brought from home. The room smelled like burnt coffee and microwave popcorn. A vending machine hummed in the corner. Keisha sat across from him, scrolling through her phone. She worked mornings, had 3 kids, talked about starting her own catering business someday. Ramon, a college student who worked evenings, was heating up ramen in the microwave. The break room was small, 4 round tables, a bulletin board covered in corporate memos about safety protocols and quarterly targets, fluorescent lights that buzzed if you listened too closely. Marcus had 15 minutes left on his break. He was halfway through his sandwich when Dale appeared in the doorway. "Webb, you got a visitor." Marcus looked up. Dale's expression was strange, confused, maybe annoyed. Behind Dale stood Victoria Harlow. She wore a navy suit and heels. Her blonde hair was still pulled into that severe bun. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm. She looked like she'd walked out of a boardroom and into the wrong building. Everyone in the break room looked up. Victoria stepped past Dale. She smiled, not warmly. The kind of smile people use when they're performing generosity. "Marcus Webb?" she said. Her voice carried across the room. Marcus set down his sandwich. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you properly for Friday night." Victoria crossed to his table. She pulled an envelope from her portfolio and set it in front of him. "You helped me when I was in a difficult position. I appreciate it." Marcus glanced at the envelope, then at Keisha, then at Dale, who was still standing in the doorway watching. "That's not necessary," Marcus said quietly. Victoria talked over him. "There's $50 in there, to replace what you gave me and then some." She paused. "But I also wanted to discuss something else with you." The microwave beeped. Ramon pulled out his ramen but didn't move. He just stood there, watching. Victoria opened her portfolio. "I did some research over the weekend. I looked into your background." She said it like it was normal. Like privacy wasn't a concept that applied to her. "I know you used to work in corporate." Marcus's jaw tightened. Keisha's eyes widened slightly. "I had no idea," Victoria continued, "that someone with your experience was working here. It's honestly a waste of talent." She pulled out a business card. "I'm the CEO of Meridian Automotive Solutions. I'd like to offer you a second chance." The room had gone completely still. Even the vending machine seemed quieter. "I've arranged for you to interview for a mid-level analyst position at Meridian," Victoria said. "It's not what you had before, of course, but it's a start. A way back into the industry." She set the card on top of the envelope. "This is about giving people opportunities when they're ready to accept help." Marcus felt every eye in the room. Keisha staring, Ramon frozen by the microwave. Dale's expression hardening into something cold. Dale hadn't known. None of them had known. Victoria was still smiling. "I believe in second chances, Marcus. People fall on hard times. That's understandable. But when someone's willing to help you back up, you should take it." She said it like she was rescuing him. Like he should be grateful. Marcus reached for the envelope. Not because he wanted it, because refusing would make this moment last longer. "I'll think about it." "Wonderful." Victoria closed her portfolio. "The card has my assistant's number. Call by Wednesday to schedule your interview." She glanced around the break room. At the worn tables, the stained linoleum, the bulletin board. "You deserve better than this." She left the way she came, heels clicking against the floor. Dale stepped aside to let her pass, then followed her out to make sure she found the exit. The break room stayed silent. Keisha broke it first. "You worked in corporate?" Marcus didn't answer. He picked up the envelope and the business card, folded them both, and put them in his pocket. Ramon finally moved from the microwave. "What job did you have?" "It was a long time ago," Marcus said. "But what was it?" Marcus stood. He threw away the rest of his sandwich. "Something I walked away from." Dale reappeared in the doorway. His arms were crossed. His expression had shifted from confused to something harder. "So you've been keeping secrets, Webb?" "No secrets. Just didn't think it mattered." "Didn't think it mattered." Dale's voice had an edge now. "You worked in corporate, and you're here slowing down my register lines." Marcus didn't respond. He walked toward the door. Dale didn't move. "Interesting timing," Dale said. "You get some fancy job offer right when layoffs are about to hit. Makes you wonder if you knew something the rest of us didn't." "I didn't know anything," Marcus said quietly. "Sure." Dale stepped aside. "Your break's over anyway. Get back to work." Marcus walked past him. Out in the hallway, he could see Amara waiting near the customer service desk. She had her backpack on. School had let out an hour ago, and she'd walked here like she always did. She looked up when she saw him. "Dad?" He crossed to her, knelt down so they were eye level. "Are we moving?" she asked. Her voice was small, uncertain. Marcus thought about the envelope in his pocket, the business card, Victoria Harlow's smile, the way she'd said second chance like she was bestowing a gift instead of exposing him. He thought about Dale's expression, Keisha's shock, the silence that had filled the break room like smoke. He thought about what it would mean to walk back into Meridian, to interview for a position 3 levels below what he'd left, to accept charity from the woman whose restructuring was about to put him out of work. "No," he said, "not like this." Tuesday morning. The conference room on the 20th floor of Meridian Automotive Solutions had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Detroit. The glass walls were polished. The table was mahogany. Everything gleamed. Victoria sat at the head of the table. Her CFO, Michael Strauss, stood beside a projection screen showing financial charts, all of them trending down. Hammond Industries is suing for breach of contract, Strauss said. Product defects, missed compliance deadlines, vendor lawsuits are stacking up. We're looking at $40 million in potential damages. Victoria's general counsel, Nina Park, flipped through a legal brief. The board is demanding answers. They want a resolution by end of week. Trevor sat in the corner, taking notes on his tablet. Victoria studied the charts. Hammond Industries. They'd acquired the company 18 months ago, a supplier of automotive parts. It should have been straightforward. It should have worked, but it was bleeding money. Strauss advanced to the next slide. My recommendation is we settle quickly, cut our losses, move on. The longer this drags out, the worse it gets. Victoria's jaw tightened. Settling doesn't fix the problem. Why did the acquisition fail in the first place? Strauss shrugged. Bad luck, market conditions. These things happen. These things don't just happen, Michael. Nina closed her brief. With respect, Victoria, the damage is done. We need damage control, not a post-mortem. Victoria looked at the financial projections again. Something was wrong with the acquisition from the start. The due diligence had missed something critical. But what? She thought about the protocols Meridian used, the frameworks for evaluating acquisitions, the analysis models. Then she thought about Marcus Webb's employee file. Senior VP of Strategic Innovation, built the market analysis protocols still in use. The protocols they'd used to evaluate Hammond. The meeting ended an hour later. Victoria returned to her office and pulled up the Hammond acquisition files. She read through the due diligence reports, the vendor assessments, the integration plan. It was all there. Every step followed protocol, but something was missing. She closed her laptop, looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, Marcus Webb was scanning groceries at Register 7. And he'd know. He'd built these protocols. He'd know what was wrong. That night, Victoria drove to the grocery store. She arrived just after 10 p.m. The parking lot was nearly empty. She walked through the automatic doors and found Marcus at his register. He looked up when he saw her. His expression didn't change. Miss Harlow, I need to speak with you, she said. Marcus finished ringing up a customer, bagged their items, wished them a good night. Then he turned to Victoria. My break's not for another hour. This can't wait. He glanced toward the customer service desk. Amara wasn't there. School night. She was probably at home. Victoria felt a small relief. She didn't want the girl to see this. Marcus called over to a coworker, asked them to cover his register. Then he led Victoria to a quiet corner near the produce section. The air smelled like refrigerated fruit and floor cleaner. I have a problem, Victoria said. A corporate crisis. An acquisition that's failing. I need someone who understands how to evaluate these things. Someone who built the protocols we're using. Marcus crossed his arms. You have a whole team for that. My team is recommending we settle and walk away, but that doesn't address why the acquisition failed. Victoria kept her voice low. Professional. You built Meridian's acquisition protocols. You'd know what we missed. I haven't worked in that world in a long time. But you remember, you'd see what my team can't. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Victoria watched him think, watched him calculate whatever internal equation was running through his mind. You want me to consult, he said finally. Off the books, unpaid initially. Think of it as a favor. She paused. I did arrange that interview for you. This could be a way to show the board what you're capable of. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A stock clerk pushed a cart past them, wheels squeaking. Marcus's dark eyes studied her face. There was something in his expression she couldn't read. Not anger, not resentment. Just a kind of quiet assessment. What's the company, he asked. Hammond Industries. Auto parts supplier. We acquired them 18 months ago. Now they're drowning in lawsuits and we're facing $40 million in damages. When do you need an answer? End of week. Marcus looked past her toward his register, toward the worn linoleum and the discount products and the job that would end in 3 more weeks whether he helped her or not. I'll look at the files, he said. Victoria felt something loosen in her chest. Relief. Maybe gratitude. I'll have my assistant send you an encrypted data dump. Tonight. All right. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. My direct email is on there. Send me whatever you find. Marcus took the card, slid it into his vest pocket without looking at it. Victoria turned to leave, then stopped. Thank you, Marcus. He didn't respond. Just walked back to his register. Victoria left the store and drove home. By the time she reached Birmingham, Trevor had already sent Marcus the files. 40 gigabytes of acquisition data, vendor contracts, integration reports, compliance records. Marcus opened the data dump on his laptop at 11 p.m. Amara was asleep in the next room. The apartment was quiet except for the radiator's familiar clank. He started with the vendor relationships. Hammond's value wasn't in their facilities or their patents. It was in their network. Decades-old partnerships with manufacturers. Exclusive contracts. Trust built over years. Then he pulled up Meridian's integration plan. They'd severed the vendor relationships, centralized everything, brought it all in-house. They'd cut out the very thing that made Hammond valuable. Marcus leaned back in his chair. It was such an obvious mistake. The kind of mistake he would have flagged in the first review. The kind of mistake that happened when you followed the protocol but didn't understand why the protocol existed. The fix was complex. They'd have to rebuild the vendor relationships, renegotiate contracts, decentralize operations. It would take time and humility, and a willingness to admit they'd done it wrong. But it was doable. Marcus worked through the night. He built out the analysis, documented the flaw, outlined the solution. By dawn, he had a 20-page report with supporting data. He attached it to an email, typed Victoria's address, paused with his finger over the send button. In the next room, Amara's alarm went off. Time for school. Marcus hit send. The email left his laptop with a soft whoosh. Somewhere in Birmingham, Victoria's phone would buzz. She'd open the report. She'd read his analysis. And she'd know he'd just saved her company $40 million. Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. The Meridian boardroom filled with sunlight from floor-to-ceiling windows. 20 executives sat around the mahogany table. Board Chairman Robert Chen at the head, CFO Michael Strauss to his right. Victoria stood at the presentation screen. She wore a charcoal suit, her blonde hair pulled back, her expression confident. The Hammond Industries crisis, she began, has been our most significant challenge this quarter. But I believe we've identified a path forward. She advanced to the first slide. A young analyst named Derek Paulson sat near the back of the room, fresh out of business school. Nervous hands folded on the table. Derek Paulson, one of our junior analysts, has conducted a comprehensive review of the acquisition, Victoria said. His findings are remarkable. Derek's face went pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, said nothing. Victoria walked the board through Marcus's analysis, every word reworded slightly. Every insight presented as Derek's work, the vendor relationships that Meridian had severed, the integration plan that destroyed Hammond's core value, the fix that would require humility and time but would save the company $40 million. Robert Chen leaned forward. This is impressive strategic thinking. Thank you, Victoria said smoothly. The first have been working closely with Derek to develop this framework. Michael Strauss flipped through the printed report. His eyes narrowed. Some of these data models predate your tenure at Meridian, Victoria. Where did they come from? Legacy protocols, Victoria said without hesitation. We adapted existing frameworks to the current situation. That's sound business practice. Strauss nodded slowly. He didn't look convinced. But he didn't push further. The presentation continued. 20 minutes of Marcus's work delivered in Victoria's voice. The board asked questions. Victoria answered them. Derek sat silent in the back, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the edge of the table. When it ended, Robert Chen stood. Excellent work, Victoria. Derek, this is exactly the kind of strategic innovation we need. I'm approving the plan immediately. The board members murmured agreement. Papers shuffled. Coffee cups clinked. Victoria thanked them. Derek remained in his seat until she looked at him. Then he stood and followed her out of the boardroom. In the hallway, Victoria turned to him. Good work in there. Derek's voice came out quiet, strained. I didn't do that work. You were part of the team. That's how these things work. I wasn't on any team. That analysis came from collaborative efforts across the organization, Victoria said. Her tone shifted. Harder now. You're a junior analyst, Derek. You want to advance here. You learn how credit works in the corporate world. Understood? Derek's hands clenched, then relaxed. Understood. Victoria returned to her office. Trevor was waiting with her afternoon schedule. She told him to draft a press release, something about strategic innovation and turnaround leadership. By 4 p.m., the release was live on LinkedIn. Marcus saw it on his phone during his dinner break at the grocery store. He sat in the break room, a sandwich half-eaten in front of him. The headline glowed on his screen. Meridian CEO Victoria Harlow unveils turnaround strategy for Hammond acquisition. He scrolled through the article. Every detail from his analysis, Every recommendation he'd spent the night building, his name appeared nowhere. Derek Paulson was mentioned once, strategic support from Meridian's talented analyst team. Marcus set down his phone. The break room was empty. The vending machine hummed. Outside, he could hear the store's fluorescent lights buzzing. He picked up his phone again, found Victoria's number, called. She answered on the third ring. "Marcus, I was going to reach out. I saw the press release. Yes, the board approved the plan. Thanks to your input, we're moving forward with implementation." Her voice was bright, professional. "I really do appreciate your help with this. My name isn't in the article." "Well, no, of course not." Victoria's tone shifted slightly, like she was explaining something obvious to someone slow. "You worked off the books, Marcus. No NDA. No documentation, no formal engagement. I sent you a 20-page analysis, which was very helpful. But in terms of official credit, that's not how business works. You understand that, don't you?" Marcus's grip tightened on his phone. "I understand you're taking credit for my work. I'm presenting a solution that will save this company $40 million. A solution developed by my team using established protocols." Her voice got harder, sharper. "A grocery store cashier claiming credit for strategic corporate work would undermine the board's confidence. You must see that. So you just steal it." "Steal is a strong word. You did me a favor. I'm grateful. But this is business, Marcus. This is how things work at this level. Maybe you've forgotten." The line went quiet. Marcus could hear her breathing. "Look," Victoria said, softer now. "I know you're upset, but you're in no position to push back on this. You worked off the books. You have no documentation, no proof. And honestly, who would believe you?" She paused. "I suggest you focus on that interview I arranged. Build your way back into the industry properly, the right way. I don't want your interview." "Then I don't know what else to tell you. Thank you for your input. I really do mean that." She hung up. Marcus sat in the break room holding his phone. Outside, someone called his name. His break was over. Time to return to Register 7. He stood slowly, walked to the doorway, stopped. Through the window, he could see Amara sitting near customer service, homework spread across her lap, yellow ribbons in her hair. She looked up and waved. He waved back. Then he returned to the break room and sat down at the table. He opened his laptop, found the original files, the analysis with his timestamps, the email headers, the side-by-side comparison between what he'd written and what Victoria had presented. He had copies of everything. Thursday night. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open, the screen's blue light washing over his face. It was past midnight. The apartment was quiet except for the radiator's familiar clank. He'd been staring at the files for 2 hours. The original analysis with his timestamps, the email headers proving when he'd sent it, the side-by-side comparison between his work and Victoria's presentation. Behind him, a door creaked, small footsteps crossed the floor. "Dad?" Marcus looked up. Amara stood in the doorway wearing her pajamas, yellow stars printed on the fabric. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf for the night. "You should be asleep, baby. You still up?" She walked to the table and climbed into the chair beside him. Her eyes were heavy, tired but awake. "What's wrong?" Marcus closed the laptop halfway. "Just some work stuff." "What kind of work stuff?" He looked at his daughter, 10 years old enough to understand some things, too young to understand others. "Someone took credit for something I did," he said simply. Amara's brow furrowed. "Like when Tommy copied my science project. Something like that. Did you tell the teacher?" Marcus almost smiled. "If only it were that simple. It's more complicated than that." "Why?" "Because the person who took credit is important, powerful, and I'm just..." He stopped himself. "I'm nobody to them." Amara was quiet for a moment. She looked at the laptop, then at her father's face, the tired lines around his eyes, the way his broad shoulders sagged forward. "What would Mama do?" she asked. Marcus's breath caught. He looked at his daughter, at her serious expression, at the way she was watching him like she already knew the answer. Shanice wouldn't have stayed silent. Shanice would have fought. She'd fought cancer for 3 years. She'd fought for every day she got with Amara. She never backed down from anything that mattered. "She wouldn't let them get away with it," Marcus said quietly. Amara reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were small, warm. "You're my hero, even when nobody sees, Dad." Her voice was soft, certain. "But maybe it's time they see." Marcus looked down at her hand in his, then at the laptop, then at his daughter's face. He made a decision. After Amara went back to bed, Marcus opened LinkedIn. He searched for Robert Chen, board chairman at Meridian Automotive Solutions. Chen had been on the board during Marcus's tenure. They'd worked together on 3 major acquisitions. Marcus composed a message. Brief, professional, direct, Mr. Chen. I'm Marcus Webb. I served as Senior VP of Strategic Innovation at Meridian from 2005 to 2010. I'm requesting an emergency meeting regarding the Hammond Industries turnaround strategy presented to the board this week. I have documentation that requires your immediate attention. Attached is my original analysis with timestamps and a comparison with the presentation delivered by Ms. Harlow. He attached the files. Hit send. Waited. 53 minutes later, his phone buzzed. Chen's response was 2 lines. Friday, 9 a.m., Meridian headquarters, 20th floor boardroom. Friday morning, Marcus stood outside Meridian Automotive Solutions in borrowed business casual, a shirt from Ramon at the grocery store, pants from a thrift shop. The clothes fit well enough. He'd shaved, trimmed his hair. He looked at his reflection in the glass doors. 15 years since he'd walked out of this building. He went inside. The boardroom was exactly as he remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany table, 20 chairs. Robert Chen sat at the head. 12 board members filled the seats. Victoria sat near the middle, her face pale, her hands folded on the table. Marcus walked to the front of the room. Every eye followed him. He was aware of his dark skin, his off-the-rack clothes, the way he stood differently than he used to. Chen gestured to a seat. Mr. Webb, thank you for coming. Marcus remained standing. Thank you for seeing me. Your message was concerning. Please proceed. Marcus opened his laptop, connected it to the presentation screen. His original analysis appeared. 20 pages. Time-stamped, documented. Wednesday morning, Ms. Beressid. Harlow presented a turnaround strategy for Hammond Industries. Marcus's voice was quiet, steady. The analysis was credited to Derek Paulson, a junior analyst. I'm here to show you that the work was mine. He walked them through it, the email headers showing when he'd sent the analysis to Victoria, the timestamps proving he'd completed it Tuesday night, the side-by-side comparisons showing how Victoria's presentation was his work, reworded. The board members leaned forward, flipped through printed copies Marcus had prepared, checked dates, cross-referenced documents. Chen looked at Victoria. Ms. Harlow? Victoria's composure had cracked. Her hands were no longer folded. They gripped the edge of the table. This was a collaborative effort, she said. Her voice was too loud, defensive. Mr. Webb provided input, but the strategic framework, the presentation, the recommendations to the board that was developed by my team. The timestamps show otherwise, Marcus said. Timestamps can be manipulated. Marcus pulled up the email server logs, the metadata, the digital trail that couldn't be faked. Victoria's face flushed. This is Marcus came to me looking for help, for work. I gave him an opportunity to contribute, and now he's trying to claim credit for strategic work he's not qualified to do anymore. I'm not qualified? Marcus's voice didn't rise. It deepened, steadied. I built the protocols your team used. I designed the frameworks Meridian still operates on. I did this work in one night because I remember how to do it. Chen raised a hand. Ms. Harlow, did you know Mr. Webb's history when you asked him to consult? Victoria didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched. I knew, she said finally, and you asked him to work off the books, unpaid, then presented his work as your own. I offered him an interview, a chance to rebuild his career. He should be grateful for stop. Chen's voice cut through hers. Just stop. One of the older board members, a woman with silver hair, was staring at Marcus, Patricia Voss. She'd been on the board when Marcus was VP. I remember you, she said quietly. Marcus Webb. You led the Chrysler supplier acquisition in 2009. You saved us $43 million. Other board members looked at Marcus differently now, not as a grocery store cashier in borrowed clothes, as someone they'd once trusted. Chen looked at Marcus. Why did you leave Meridian? Marcus met his gaze. My wife was dying. I chose her. The silence in the room was complete. No one moved. No one spoke. Chen turned to Victoria. Did you know his history when you took his work? Victoria's hands were shaking now. She didn't answer. Chen nodded slowly. Ms. Harlow, please step outside. We'll call you back in when we're ready. Victoria stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. She walked to the door without looking at anyone. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Chen looked at Marcus. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll be in touch. Marcus packed up his laptop, nodded to the board, walked out of the boardroom. In the elevator going down, he stood alone, watching the floor numbers decrease. 2019, 18. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. The doors opened to the lobby. He walked through the glass entrance and out into the Detroit morning. The sun was breaking through the clouds, and Marcus Webb had just taken back his dignity. 3 months later, spring came early to Detroit. The snow melted. Trees along Gratiot Avenue started showing green. The radiator in Marcus's apartment stopped clanking because he'd finally had it fixed. Marcus sat at his small kitchen table on a Wednesday evening. His laptop was open. A cup of coffee steamed beside him. Through the window, he could see the city lights beginning to glow as dusk settled over the neighborhood. His phone buzzed. Robert Chen's name appeared on the screen. Marcus answered. Chen, Marcus. Just checking in. How's the practice going? Good. Building slowly, 3 clients so far. Chen's voice was warm, encouraging. That's how it starts. The board wanted me to remind you if you change your mind about the VP position, the offer stands. I appreciate that, but I'm where I need to be. I figured you'd say that. Chen paused. For what it's worth, what you did took courage. The board respects that. After the call ended, Marcus closed his laptop. He'd spent the day working on a business plan for Keisha, his former co-worker from the grocery store. She was launching a catering company, Soul Food and Caribbean Fusion. She'd saved for 3 years and needed help structuring the financials. She was his first client, a woman who'd once shared the break room with him, who'd watched Victoria humiliate him and hadn't looked away. Marcus's consulting practice operated out of a small office in Midtown. 1 room, a desk, 2 chairs, a window that looked out at the street. He worked with Detroit nonprofits, small manufacturers, minority-owned businesses that couldn't afford the big firms. The settlement from Meridian's 6 figures for stolen work had given him enough to launch. The board had offered him his old VP title, a corner office, a salary that would have changed everything. He'd said no, because he didn't need to prove anything to Meridian anymore. He'd already proven it to himself. Amara appeared in the kitchen doorway. She wore her school uniform, a yellow ribbon still tied in her hair. She'd grown a half-inch since winter. Her face had lost some of its roundness. She was starting to look like Shanice. Dad, can you help me with math? Of course, baby. They sat together at the table. Marcus walked her through fractions. She was in 5th grade now, enrolled in a better school on the other side of the city. She took piano lessons on Tuesdays. She had friends who came over for playdates. The apartment was still small, still on Gratiot Avenue, still in the same neighborhood. But it felt different now, lighter. The neighbors didn't argue as much through the walls. Or maybe Marcus just didn't notice it anymore. After Amara finished her homework, Marcus made dinner, pasta with vegetables, garlic bread. They ate together at the kitchen table, talking about her day, her piano practice, the book she was reading. Later, after she'd gone to bed, Marcus opened his laptop again. An email sat in his inbox, sent an hour ago. The subject line read, "An apology from Victoria Harlow." Marcus stared at the name for a moment. Then he opened it. The email was formal, carefully worded. It acknowledged what she'd taken. It admitted the harm she'd caused. It offered a referral network, her contacts, her clients, her corporate connections. She'd been demoted to chief strategy officer. Her board authority was gone. But she still had access, still had influence. She was offering it to him as restitution. Marcus read the email twice. Then he stood and walked to his desk in the corner. He kept a photo there now. Shanice in her engineering hard hat, standing in front of the Gordie Howe Bridge, smiling like she'd just solved an impossible problem. He picked up the photo, looked at his wife's face, remembered her voice, her laugh, the way she never accepted anything less than honesty. "I'm building something good," he said quietly to the photograph. "Something you'd be proud of." He set the photo down and returned to his laptop. He hit reply. The response was short, direct, true. Apology accepted, no referrals needed. "I'm building something different." He hit send. The next morning, Marcus walked Amara to school. They left the apartment at 7:30. The sun was breaking through clouds, warming the sidewalk beneath their feet. Marcus's hand held hers. Her backpack bounced against her shoulders. They passed the corner store, the bus stop, the church where they sometimes went on Sundays. The city moved around them, people heading to work, kids walking to school, the rhythm of Detroit in motion. Amara looked up at him. "Dad? Yeah, baby? Are you happy?" Marcus looked down at his daughter, at her serious brown eyes, at the yellow ribbon in her hair, at the question that cut straight through everything else. "Yeah," he said, "I am." And he meant it. They reached the school. Marcus knelt down to eye level. "Have a good day. I'll pick you up at 3. Love you, Dad." "Love you too." He watched her run toward the building. She turned once at the entrance and waved. He waved back. Then she disappeared through the doors. Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a moment. The Detroit skyline rose behind him. Glass towers reflecting morning light. The city where he'd risen, where he'd fallen, where he'd built something new. He thought about Victoria Harlow in her corner office, stripped of the power she'd wielded like a weapon. He thought about Derek Paulson, the junior analyst who'd accepted credit that wasn't his. He thought about Register 7 and Dale and the fluorescent lights of a grocery store that would soon close its doors. But mostly, he thought about Amara, about Shanice, about the kind of man he wanted to be when no one was watching, when there were no boards to impress, no titles to chase, just the quiet work of showing up every day with integrity intact. True power, he learned, wasn't about the title you held. It wasn't about the office or the salary or the recognition. It was about the integrity you kept when no one was watching, the choices you made when they cost you something, the dignity you refused to trade, no matter how high the price. Marcus turned and walked back toward his apartment. The sun warmed his face. The city hummed around him. And somewhere ahead, in a small office in Midtown, a modest consulting practice waited for a man who'd learned that building something different was worth more than reclaiming something old. He'd given his last $20 to a woman who didn't know his name. And in the end, he'd gotten his dignity back. That was worth more than any corner office could ever be.